Hello and welcome to a quick breakdown of the Corvus Belli Happy Days 3 Tohaa made to order bundle that's recently been announced. Something that's been asked a few times in comment sections of this channel is, hey, Tohaa are really interesting as a faction, but they're discontinued. Is there any way to get into them? What do you advise? And particularly since the success of the Happy Days promotion that Corvus Belli ran back over Christmas, it's been kind of on my mind that this is something that they might consider doing, and glory be they have. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is looking at what's available as part of this promotion. People have got between May 13th to May 31st to put orders in, and then Corvus Belli will cast and send out the Tohaa models that are part of this promotion. So we'll look at what you can get and how you can expand that with what's currently available from Corvus Belli, as well as some consideration of possible aftermarket options, and then the kind of lists that you can build with the models that are available. So firstly, let's just jump into what's in this promotion. So what they've got on offer are two different Combat Force repacks. They're split into Combat Force Repack Alpha and Combat Force Repack Beta. If you are an existing Tohaa player, or say like a Spiral Core player, you might consider getting just one or the other, but frankly, if you want to start collecting Tohaa, you'll want to get one of each of these. So in Combat Force Repack Alpha, coming in at €75, you get 3 McCalls. Now they've chosen the good sculpts here, 2 with Heavy Flamethrower and 1 with CCW, which means you can use these for any of your typical McCall sculpts. Technically, I think that one is considered to be a viral CCW, but it's fine. Basically, what you don't have are Combi Rifle McCalls, so you will be very WYSIWYG here. For those who are unfamiliar, what you see is what you get, i.e. not proxied. There are then 2 Kamale Infantry, one with a Combi Rifle and Pistol, and one with a hacking device. These are just basic Tohaa line troops. You will use these occasionally. In particular, the Combi Rifle one will make a very serviceable paramedic, and a Kamale paramedic can be kind of like a discount piece that's still very useful to have in some Tohaa lists. The Hacker, I suspect, will actually see more use as a HVT. It is an awesome and like very kind of old school sculpt. They wouldn't make anything like that today with the attached like hacking device, biological hanging off of the base. It looks super cool, but it is definitely in the weirder side of how Tohaa sculpts can be. This is something I would expect, frankly, you to use a fair bit of the time as, yeah, like a HVT or a scenario objective, because there's also a diplomatic delegate in here, and you are absolutely not going to be using her as a HVT. Diplomatic delegate you will put in basically every army. It is only 5 points, and it's one of the best 5 points you can spend in the game. Then we have 2 Chaxa Auxiliars. Again, they've picked the good profiles here. This used to come as a box of 4, which included a HMG and a missile trooper. Realistically, 2 of these with heavy flamethrowers will fit into a lot of Tohaa lists, just bulking the list out, giving you a ton of utility and some cheap orders for a relatively limited cost. So the points to dollar ratio in this pack is not fantastic. These are all cheap pieces, but that's kind of not the point. These are all, particularly the McCalls, the Delegate, and the Chaxas, are backbone elements of Tohaa. So in terms of starting off a Tohaa collection, 3 McCalls is a really good number. You absolutely want the Delegate, and 2 Chaxas is about as many as you would ever take, particularly in N4, but it's a really good number to own. So, excellent start. Let's look at Combat Pack Beta. So in Combat Pack Beta, we are continuing on into, really kind of more of those core essentials, but these ones are the more expensive pieces. So to note, what we have in particular are 2 Kael'tar Specialists. This is just the old Kael'tar Specialist box, one with Combi Rifle, one with Light Shotgun, 2 Symbiomates, 2 Symbio Bombs. You will almost always take 2 of these in any Tohaa list. The actual configuration of them, you often be using that Combi Rifle as a Light Shotgun one, just never mind that, that's totally fine. You'd want the 2 different sculpts for that anyway, so excellent these have been included. We then have a Nikul Ambush unit, one of my favorite pieces in the game. Great to have, and it's good that it's in there because Nikuls are particularly difficult to proxy. Because they're a sapper piece, having an infantry model that looks like it belongs on a Silhouette 3 sculpt, there aren't many sculpts that capture that particularly well, and the Nikul is a wonderful sculpt. Like, the sniper pose is awesome, so it's great that that is in there. We then have a Sakiel regiment with Spitfire and a Suquail regiment with missile launcher, light shotgun, and breaker pistols. Now, what probably would have been great here is if they'd included 2 Suquails. So there were only ever 2 Suquail sculpts. One of them was the missile launcher, one of them was the K1 combi. Having both, frankly, Suquails are a piece that you will often take 2 of in a Tohaa list, but not always. So they have included at least 1 in there, and the Sakiel is a fine piece as well. Probably a little less common in many Tohaa lists in terms of competition, and it's probably the most dated of any of the sculpts, but it is at least another SWC weapon, and we'll see about using it in some of the lists that we'll make. Finally, we have Aelus Kisan. A-list Keysen has kind of two particular utilities in this sort of a pack. Firstly, yes, if you're ever playing something like a classified, highly classified list, or countermeasures, for example, she is a fairly useful piece to take, but just beyond that, she's a very good universal proxy. Cool looking model with pistol and gun, you can use her for a lot of things, so she'll fit in well as just a good piece to have in this pack and have painted, etc. So if we jump on over into Infinity Army, we can see that with 0 proxies, this gives us not quite a 300 point list. We can make the Kamale in there a lieutenant, and that would make this a legal 242 point list, but even stretching things almost as far as they can go, strictly speaking, I could put Chain of Command on both of those Kael'tars, and that would push us a little bit further, up to, a bit north of 250. This does not get us to a 300 point list. However, if we buy just a few more things as part of this purchase, and we're willing to do some proxying, and look, let's just be very real here, if you play Tohaa, proxying was always going to be on the table. Tohaa were one of those factions where, particularly as we shifted from N3 into N4, many of the profiles that were really cool and compelling about the faction just never had sculpts. Like, there was never, even in N3, there was never a Suquale HMG sculpt, and that was one of the pieces that you really, really commonly took in N3. So Tohaa have always been a faction where we've just had to do some creative proxying, but fortunately the faction is very amenable to that. Everything looks kind of alien, everything looks kind of weird, the weapon designs are different to other factions. If you play Tohaa, you have an obligation to keep your opponent informed and remembering about what it is that you're actually using, but it's ultimately fairly amenable to proxying. So, with those Combat Force Alpha and Beta, what else would I suggest buying, and what can we then do in terms of list construction with some limited proxies? So, in terms of what you can buy right now from the Corvus Belli website, there are a few things I would consider adding to any order that included this Happy Days stuff, if you're thinking about starting Tohaa. The first is either or both of a Libertos Freedom Fighter with light shotgun or a motorized bounty hunter. The Libertos is the cheaper of the two, it will fit comfortably in many Tohaa lists. It just gives you one more irregular piece to get you up to 15 troopers. One of the really nice things about that pack, the Happy Days pack, is that it is 14 troopers, so we're very close to a complete 15 trooper list, and just one piece, the Libertos, is about as cheap as you're going to get in terms of getting up to those 15 troopers. Cheap in terms of dollars, that is. The list that I'll show off at the end of this only assumes that you buy the Libertos, but in terms of rounding your collection out, there are a few other things I would consider as well. So one of those is a motorized bounty hunter. Now, you've got 2 models available to you. You only need to get one of them, and they both absolutely slap. There are 2 models available right now that are MBHs. The first is the actual motorized bounty hunter with boarding shotgun. This piece is, firstly, it's a classic, but it's aged incredibly well. It's a wonderful, wonderful sculpt, but it is coming in at an expensive 20 euros, which is why I would say probably get the Librotos first. However, either this or the Penthesilea bootleg. It's a model on a bike. It's not obviously affiliated with any particular faction, therefore it makes a great motorized bounty hunter. Same price, also an awesome sculpt. Either of these will let you play a motorized bounty hunter in Tohaa, and Tohaa like taking motorized bounty hunters. Usually in Tohaa, you're looking at probably at most 3 irregular troopers, and of the beast hunters, motorized bounty hunters, Libertos, and diplomatic delegates, you're always taking diplomatic delegate, and then it's kind of just take your pick 2 of the other 3. For Beast Hunters, there are a few models you could get on the Corvus Belli page, but it would usually be my 3rd pick, so I'm recommending either a Libertos or a Motorized Bounty Hunter, just one biker of your choice, to get yourself a couple of extra models. Finally, there is one other model that is actually a Tohaa model that is still in production, and that's because it is also a combined army model, so I'd probably recommend, if you can afford it, adding in a Greif operator as well. Because it's got the 2 pistols, this thing makes kind of like a great multi-purpose proxy piece. It can be a Clipsos, you can play it as a Greif, it could quite easily play as any of the impersonators or infiltrators, etc. Or in a pinch, because of the 2 pistols, you could even slap it into a list as another Suquale Commando, although it doesn't look exactly like one. Ultimately, it's a nice sculpt. It's got 2 different head options. Pick the one you think looks best with the list, and it gives you just one extra piece that is an actual Tohaa model and fits the Tohaa aesthetic. Now, for the list I'm going to show off at the end of this, I haven't assumed that you've picked this up. I also haven't assumed you've picked up a motorized bounty hunter, but having access to this would give you more options. So, assuming that we buy just the 2 Happy Days packs and just a Libertos, which is about as cheap as you're looking at in terms of buy-in, this is what you can do with a little bit of relatively limited proxying. Actually, it's quite a bit of proxying, but it's at least all Tohaa models, and it kind of makes internal sense. So what we're doing in terms of the proxies here is the Libertos is obviously Libertos. Alis Kisan and the Saquiel are going to be Saquiel Spitfire are going to be pretending to be tack wheels. So Alis will be a viral combi tack wheel. The Saquiel Spitfire will be a chain of command tack wheel Spitfire. And to make up points, we're going to be proxying both of the line infantry, the Kameo line infantry, as Sakiels. Now, yes, that does mean that you have a Sakiel pretending to be one thing and other things pretending to be a Sakiel, but it's kind of the best that I could do with the models that are available. And so what that gives us is this list on screen here now, where we have the Takwheel Chain of Command Spitfire. Again, you're using the Sakiel for that. Sakiel Paramedic, we're using a Kamale as that. Suquael Missile Launcher, Kael'tar Combi Rifle Chain of Command, McCall, Libertos, 2 Chaxas, and then in Group 2, a Nickel Mine Layer, Takwheel Lieutenant Viral Combi, Sakiel Paramedic, Kael'tar Specialist Light Shotgun, McCall, and a Diplomatic Delegate. So we've got 3 triads in there. The first triad is the Chain of Command Spitfire, the Sakiel Paramedic, and the McCall. The second triad is the Suquael Commando, the Kael'tar Chain of Command, and the McCall. And the third triad, we're going to leave the Takwheel Officer unlinked, although you can chuck it into that Group 2 link if you want, but we're planning on the Sakiel Paramedic, the Kael'tar Specialist, and the McCall. So that gives us 3 fire teams. All of them have a specialist in them. There's at least some kind of gunfighting in each of them, although the Group 2 one is the weakest, but the Group 2 can do its gunfighting with the Nickel. We have 15 troopers, we're spending all of our SWC and all of our points. If you forced me at gunpoint to play this into an event, I would feel relatively comfortable doing so. It is a fine, honestly, it is a solid and good list. You've got 3 symbiomates in the list as well, which you'll typically apply to the Suquael, the Nickel, and then your choice, but probably the Takwheel Spitfire. And then just give the Symbio Bomb usually to either of the Sakiels. Now, in terms of flexing from here, we can add in the Greif Operator. That gives us some options. We add in another Motorized Bounty Hunter. We can do things like replace one of the Chaxa Auxiliars for that. I would probably do that in this particular list. The Motorized Bounty Hunter only puts you up to 3 Irregulars, and it can do potentially a great deal in terms of like early attacking and stuff. So I would consider trading a Chaxa out for it if you can afford it in terms of your purchase. But beyond this, in terms of a buyer's guide, we're looking to go one of 2 ways. Option 1 is you look on the aftermarket. The Tohaa offerings on places like eBay aren't fantastic in 2024, but you can find things like Rassails, and a Rassail box is probably what I would be looking for if I was trying to expand this out and make the proxies a little more tolerable. And the reason why is that the Rassail Combi Rifle and Rassail Spitfire that you get in the Rassail pack make fantastic tack wheel proxies. They're very dynamic, they're very cool looking, they're some of the best symbio armor sculpts, and just in terms of like classically looking symbio armor that Corvus Belli ever put out. And they're notably different from Suquaels and Sakiels, so there's not really any proxy confusion throwing them into a list. Also, you can just use them as Rassails, which are a fun piece, but really, a box of those will give you a pair of Takwheel proxies, which is what you really want for a modern Tohaa list. You can also try your luck finding another Suquael Commando, which would be really, really good here, but those things are absolutely rare as hen's teeth. So what you might want to consider is looking for an STL of one. There are some that exist. I know someone has been posting them over the last few years on the main Infinity Facebook page. So if you go looking, I'm sure you can find a 3D printing file for Suquael Commandos, and just one of those with a HMG, the sculpt for which never existed, is something that you could consider quite comfortably adding to this list. Finally, and as a bit of a wildcard consideration, if I was getting into Tohaa right now with this as a purchase, I would actually consider doing like an Alien Alliance kind of vibe. You have to proxy anyway with Tohaa, and I have a massive personal soft spot for the Combined Army extra reinforcement pack. I love those models, particularly the officer in the center there. And I'm not going to ever get a chance to use them much in my combined army. I only occasionally use extra, just splashing them in. The full pack wouldn't make a lot of sense. But in terms of looking for proxies in a Tohaa list, you already have multiple alien species represented because you have the Chaxa, right? This could be kind of a cool vibe, and some of these models are sweet. If you did them all up in the same color scheme, there's a good chance they'd look reasonably consistent. Just something to consider. If I was starting off Tohaa right now in 2024 with the Happy Days pack, I would give some serious consideration to doing, like an Alien Alliance thing, running Tohaa and these guys, with these guys filling the gaps for missing Tohaa models. That would also give me access to a Gorgos proxy if I wanted to buy a Cascuda, which is likely to stay in stock, obviously, for some time. It'll be a while before they discontinue the extra, So yeah, just a consideration. Otherwise, bare minimum, Combat Force Repack Alpha, Combat Force Repack Beta, and a Libertos gets you with some proxying a fairly credible 300-point list that you'd be pretty happy to play. So I'll post both of the list codes for these armies, both what you get and what you can play it with, in the comments section. Otherwise, I'm very interested to see how other people would use some of these packs, what they would do in terms of, are you a Spiral player, expanding out your collection into Tohaa. I think the packs are great for that, especially getting access to McCalls, which are one of the big things that separates Spiral Core from Tohaa. And just generally, is this something that you think is cool? Is this something you're interested in? It's certainly, from my perspective, as soon as Happy Days were first released back in December, I wondered, hey, is this something that they will use in future? Are we going to see the return of sculpts this way on a made-to-order basis? It seems like it's something that Corvus Belli is genuinely considering and paying attention to, and it is a cool way of getting around the fact that they otherwise have to limit SKUs. They can't, just from a commercial perspective, keep the entire range alive consistently. But, like, what are we going to see next? Is it going to be Shock Army? That would be a fan favorite. Or Caledonians, Neoterra? What is there that's currently out of production that you would be interested in? Anyway, as always, I hope you enjoyed this. Just a quick video to talk through this promotion in case people hadn't seen it and were interested in it, or my thoughts on how you might use this as a jumping on board to start collecting Tohaa. Hope this was useful to you, and I'll see you next time.